Hi everybody, welcome back to Cardvoyant. I'm your Cardvoyant Kris, and I'm here again today with another special video with both of my sisters, Pam and Kim. And we thought that today we'd talk a little bit about our journey, sort of our, I guess, spiritual journey, you would say. As we've mentioned before, as Kim's mentioned before, and I've also mentioned, we grew up in a very sort of traditional religious home. So to start talking about reincarnation and even, psychic abilities and mediumship, those kinds of things were a big departure for us. And it was a slow journey. Some of us were slower than others. I'm talking about me. Because Pam and Kim were both, they were way ahead of me on this. But we thought we'd talk a little bit about some of the books that took us on our journey and helped us along the way. Some books have resonated more with some of us than others, and that we fall back on and that we continue to learn from. So I thought maybe we could start with one book that we can all agree on really sort of set us on our journey, I guess, and I don't know, did you find it or
no? What are you talking about? Many masters, many lives.
Yeah.
No, you guys had found it. I don't know if it was one of you.
I can't
think
remember.
I probably saw it on Oprah. Most of my books I get on Oprah.
Yeah,
because I know it wasn't me, but it is a book by Brian Weiss, Dr. Brian Weiss. And it's called Many Lives, Many Masters. And it is a book about reincarnation and about past life regression. And Brian Weiss is a physician. He's Yale trained, clinical psychiatrist. And he sort of stumbled into accidentally kind of regressing some of his patients. He used hypnotherapy for some of his patients, and one day he sort of accidentally takes someone back to her past life. And so the first book that he wrote, Many Lives, Many Masters, is about this whole experience. And it's very much his own journey too, because he kind of doesn't know what's happening at the beginning, and then he doesn't believe it either. So, but it for me, it was, we grew up never believing in reincarnation. It just wasn't a thing at all. And to me, it was almost like, I don't know, almost like a joke that people would believe in it and then reading this book. And then,
right.
Sorry.
Well, I think with reincarnation, for me anyways, it was a very crude understanding of it.
Right.
Like, oh, you come back as a dog, or you come back as a doll. It just seems silly. You're like, why would you do it? Because I always thought, if you don't know that you came back, if you don't believe in reincarnation or you don't understand reincarnation, how can reincarnating help you?
Right.
Because you don't know what you learned in the past life. So how does that? But again, it was a very crude understanding. It was my own definition. I had never even, I made it up. I heard,
Yeah. Well, because we didn't talk about it. It's not like something that we explored.
So reading that book really explained what it could be and what it might be. And then from Brian Weiss has written many books since that are all, and I have one of them here that is my favorite.
And we've seen him in person, and he was awesome.
Yes.
The one thing about that book was that it immediately resonated with me. I was like, this makes so much more sense than just having one life to get everything done, and then you're held accountable for this one life and everything. It was almost like a relief, thinking that you could do this more than once and try and get it right, and have different experience, and it just made so much more sense. So
well, and just the fact that realizing that you don't come back as an animal, there are souls that,
or leaf or something.
I was like, okay, that makes much more sense if you're constantly a person trying to grow.
And that you have say in it.
Yes.
It's not just like somebody throws you back in and you're just like, what am I? It's like people,
what am I now?
Yeah,
it's not quantum leap.
No,
more's the pity.
Exactly. Unfortunately.
But so that was kind of the book that really set me off. And then the next one, and I don't know if you want to talk about this, Pam, because I can see that you have it with you. But Trust Your Vibes, I believe, is the book
It's
that
the
I read
first-
of
yeah.
Sonia Choquette.
Right.
And I loved that book. And she is a wonderful teacher. She's very famous. She has a great, website, a lot of books and a lot of programs that she does and everything. But she's so relatable, but also just so, and she's like a psychic, and she's teaches people to communicate with their guides and things like that. And but she's so down to earth, just such a normal person, and
Right.
is so unapologetic for everything she believes in. It's just, this is the way it is, and accept it. And her books are very accessible, I think, even though she's talking about this, she talks a lot about trusting yourself and your inner vibration and getting in touch with your vibes and getting in touch with your guides. And so that's all great and everything, but she explains it in such a way that it's just so so clear. So it's
Right.
so I think she's great. So
Yeah. And the first book I read of hers was, I think it's called Diary of a Psychic.
oh right,
And it's
I've
when
read that.
when she realizes that she's psychic, and how she kind of, I think her mother's a psychic
Yeah,
or something.
her mom
so
is, yeah.
she's so, but that's a good one to start with, I think,
Yeah,
because
yes,
it kind of
it's
tells
cool.
her story,
Yeah.
and then so
yeah.
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 And she is one too that is says that anybody can do it. Everybody has the
Right.
ability to
Right.
touch, to get in contact with their vibe.
Yeah.
I mean, not obviously their vibes, but their guides.
yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And so it's,
Yeah.
and she teaches you how to do it.
Right.
She does.
Yeah.
Her books
Right.
are very, and you can watch. She has videos on YouTube and stuff, and she's got the best aura, just this sweet.
Yeah.
She's
Vivacious,
just a really,
very-
just a very,
yeah.
very nice
And
feeling about
Brian
her.
Weiss has YouTube videos as well. He does past life regressions and meditations, and then you can just see, some of people have filmed his seminars and stuff that he does too.
Or
But
even YouTube the interview with Oprah.
Yeah.
I'm serious. It's a
Oh,
good
yeah.
one. He's very.
That
You
is
can just. He's like the calmest person, and just a good energy. Again, the
Yeah.
energy is just But
Yeah.
yeah. And I was just going to mention, since we were talking about Brian Weiss, that one of my favorite books is this one that I brought with me, which is, I don't know if it's his second or third, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's called Only Love Is
that's
Real.
a good book. Yeah.
It is so good. It's just all these different stories of people that he's counseled and done past life regressions with, and how they're. The constant theme is that always do things for love. Always do things for love. And there's a couple really amazing stories about people that knew each other in past lives and found each other. And it's just a great book. It's like a warm hug. It really is. I mean, it's
It
just
is.
there's really sweet stories and a lot of good information. It just makes you feel good. So I
Yeah.
highly recommend that.
He was probably the first person that I ever heard say that the opposite of fear is love, and the opposite of love is fear. And it was just something I'd never heard before. And I'm like, of course, it just made such sense. It was great.
Yeah.
So.
He's a good one.
So I'll let you guys talk after after I say something. No, but I wanted to mention the books that I've. There's a whole series of them, and I've read them again and again, and I go back to them. And the first time I read one, Kim and I talked about it, and I would have to read the paragraph 6 or 7 times. I'm like, what are they even talking about? And now I go back and read them, and it makes sense, but I've added a lot of knowledge, a lot of things I just had not heard about before. But they're the Seth books. And Seth is a channeled entity that was channeled by a woman named Jane Roberts in the 1970s. And there's a series of books. I think the first one I read was Seth Speaks, but they've since published books that are like a prelude to that, the early years books. And I think there's maybe 5 or 6 of those. But there's Seth Speaks, there's the nature of the psyche, there's the nature of there's a whole bunch of them, but they're all great, and they're very detailed. Seth is much about the workings, the mechanics of how things work, and so it's fascinating. I do feel like Jane Roberts was extraordinarily psychic and very smart, but sometimes you can almost feel that she doesn't have the technical ability to bring forth all this information that's really detailed, but you get the gist of it. And I love this feeling that there's this plan, that there's this way that the universe works, and it's not just like magic, that because I feel like in growing up in a very traditional religion is that so much of it was sort of like that. It's like it's just magic, and then you die and everyone's just happy and everyone's perfect and everyone's I don't know. That's kind of what I thought, and I didn't really delve into it deeper because I was so worried about getting there. Like I was so afraid that I was, going to go to hell, that I didn't think about the way that like the spirit world might actually function or anything like that. So this is very much about that, and yet it's also very much about taking control of your own life, creating your own destiny. Creating your own reality is what he talks about again and again and again. But those books are fascinating if you would like to know those kinds of detaily kind of things. So, and I know if you want to talk about the books that you love.
Want me to go ahead? Okay.
Yes, please.
All right. So mine are, of course, I always talk about Eckhart Tolle, and every time I tell my daughter Cassie, I'll be like, all the time I'm always quoting Eckhart Tolle, and she'll be like, "Stop telling me what Eckhart Tolle says," but it's true. It's great, and again, I saw him on Oprah. But there's a series for this book, A New Earth. There's a series of classes that are online, and you can go from chapter 1 all the way to chapter 10. I think there's 10 chapters, and they just sit and people ask questions, and Oprah asks him questions, and it's a great series to just kind of get your feet wet, because although the idea itself is so simple, but there is a lot to it, just because people are complicated and the world is complicated. But it basically is, for me, finally put into a way I could understand it. First of all, what the ego is, and which I love talking about the ego, what the ego is, and why we're kind of, it's almost like our evolution as human beings is to kind of break away from the ego and kind of go back to a place of being more of our spiritual self, and being aware that this is just it's almost like we're an actor in a play right now. This is just who we are right now, and our spirit is something completely separate from this person that I am. There's a spirit there as well, and so he talks a lot about being the person, the person that you are, but also that there is a spirit that's always present, and that's who you really are. It's hard to understand, I think, but like I said, he's put it in a way that I obviously cannot put it, but he's put it in a way that it is I finally got it. I never understood that before, that there's this person I am, and there's kind of a quiet spirit in the background that's observing all of this. And he also talks about, and puts it so well, why being in the present moment is so important. That is something I've always been so interested in and never really understood through Buddhism, and I have Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh is a Buddhist who writes a ton of great books about being in the present, and I never got why that was important. But what he explains is that our mind is that's our self. That's the person we are. That's the person that has a past and a future, and we're thinking about tomorrow and what we did last week, and what we regret, and our memories. That's all encapsulated in this person in our brain. But when we're in the present moment and we kind of come out of that thought process, that thought kind of haze, and we're just present, that's where our spirit resides. That's how you get in touch with that part of yourself, because you become the observer. You're just in the moment, and in a way you're kind of out of that mind and also time. You're just right there. You really aren't in that realm anymore. You're in a different kind of consciousness. And so that's what I finally got through these books. I never understood it before, and it's laid out beautifully. And he also talks is the best at, to me, the best at interpreting stories in the Bible, Christ's teachings, Buddhism. He's so great at how everything kind of is the same exact message, which is be in the present and be that observer who's kind of, it's almost like you're kind of observing your own life. And it's a different way of looking at it that is so stress-free. It's the greatest thing, because it is kind of like you realize this is just it's just what you're doing now. It's just like where you are. It's just the life you're having right now. And we were talking about, reincarnation. There have been all these other lives. And when you get in that space of being able to kind of let go of all the stuff going on in your mind, and you're present, that's also where you can get in touch with that psychic part. So after I read these books and my first silent retreat, that is when my psychicness really took off. I've talked about with people I've read that, because they always ask, how can I get going with my psychic skills, or figure out what I'm good at, or whatever. And I always say is that this book and the silent retreat, because it got me in touch with that present moment and being completely here and now, out of the head. And then your guides can start to talk to you, and you can start getting messages. At least that's how it was for me. So these were very life. I sound like Oprah now. They were life-changing books, but they really were. They really did change the way I looked at things, the way I interacted with people. It just a lot. It really, really opened up a whole new area of consciousness for me. So.
And I'll say, to just sort of piggyback on that, because I love Eckhart Tolle too. Although I tended, more toward the Seth stuff, but I loved the idea of breaking away from ego, but I didn't quite get it. And just lately, I've been reading these books by Michael Newton, and he is also a hypnotherapist, past life regressionist, but he specializes, or he spent like 20 years of his career, he's since passed away, but regressing people to their lives between lives. So he has this whole series of books where people talk about the preparing for their next life after, having one life, and then this time in between, preparing for the next life. And that's the first time that I've really thought a lot about our brains being very physical things, and our souls just sort of having to deal with what our brain is doing. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't know what we're sort of getting into, or at least kind of know what we're getting into when we come into a situation with a brain that may, have certain problems or issues or whatever. But we do have to deal with it, and that's something that we usually take on, that we decide that will help benefit us, help us grow, offer the challenge that we want. But it just really finally resonated with me how this is, we talk about tools, this is a tool that you're using to have the earthly experience, and it comes with its whole set of, issues and so forth. So, but you are the soul behind that brain. You are the sort of the actor in the play, and then that body is sort of the character that you're dealt.
Right.
So, and that you decide to take on too.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway. Pam.
So I read Eckhart Tolle as well, and I do really like him. And I watched the Oprah series with him.
Yeah,
it's great. It's really good. I tend to kind of be drawn to what I like to call mystics, or mystic thinking. So I really like Ram Dass, and I like
how
to
would
read.
you define? Just for my own thing, how is a mystic? Oh,
It's a puppy dog.
My dog is snoring in the background.
What would you say? How would you describe a mystic? Because I'm not sure.
So I would describe it. How would I describe
Or how
it?
is it different than, like, I don't know?
Well, it's
like
similar
a teacher
to,
or like a
it is. It is a teacher.
Like
it
a
is a
spiritual
teacher.
teacher.
Yeah, spiritual teacher. It tends to be along the lines of almost a Buddhist kind of thinking. That would fall into the realm. I think Eckhart Tolle to some degree would be a mystic thinking. Ram Dass's big thing is Be Here Now. That was like his first book.
Yeah.
It's very much in the presence. It's very much meditation. It's but then you also get people like my favorites, Richard Rohr, who is a Franciscan monk, and he writes a lot about just all that spirituality, just spirituality in general. But he ties in the Bible and the Christ figure and that sort of thing, and takes it to a different level and interprets the stories so differently from what we grew up with in the church we grew up with. And he resonated with me because I hate to keep bringing up Oprah because I think she was one of our spiritual advisors.
She should be here right now, really.
If she was, she'd be talking. But you know, her shows, Super Soul Sunday, really, it's good. It really is. I mean, sometimes she has people on there that don't resonate with me at all.
Yeah.
But very frequently she's had people that are very good. And that's where I saw Richard Rohr actually the first time. But he said something on one of the shows that just was like, for me, was like, zing! He said, it changed for him when he stopped thinking of God as a noun and started thinking of him as a verb. And to me, that was so different from the way I had grown up in religion. But it just was like, yes, that is it. God is not a noun. It's a verb. It's a feeling. It's an action. It's a... So anyways, so that's where he kind of goes in there. But he goes, I mean, he's pretty deep, I have to say. Sometimes I read his books and I'm like, his most recent one is called Immortal Diamond. And it's all about how to find your true self, or what you might call your higher self. And he uses scripture, he uses philosophers, he uses authors that of course he mentions, and I'm like, oh, now I have to read that guy too, or that woman, you know. Really just introspective, and everything's inside. That's one thing I like about him too. It's you have the power. You are part of God. You are part of the one. We're all connected, which is another theme that I love.
And
what
that's
I do to
something
you,
Seth
you do
books
to
and
yeah,
they all
yeah.
sort of
Whatever I do
mention
to you,
that.
I'm doing it to myself. That sort of thing, you know. So which is what we need in this world. I think there's a song that goes something like no. But so I do kind of lean towards that. I love to read Thomas Merton. And I'd love to read any kind of mystic poetry, and people like Mark Nepo that are very, again, introspective and just make you think about yourself and your connection with the world and with this,
Your fellow man.
And the spirituality. So that's kind of where I lean.
And I think that's that message, that overall message of that you're responsible for you. That's your first, and that is the most. It's the kindest thing you could do for the world, is to take care of who you are and how you interact in the world, because especially right now where everything seems so out of everybody's control, people is crazy right now. So it does feel like if you have that, you know, that idea, it does help a little bit to just think, I just have to take care of how I feel and how I think and how I interact with the world. That is really the best thing you can do, and it really is the only responsibility you have. Everything else comes after that. I mean, of course, if you have kids, you have to take care of them and that kind of thing, but really that is what you should be concentrating on. Don't worry about what's his name, Jordan or
Jim Jordan.
Jim Jordan. Don't worry about Jim Jordan and his crazy. Just, you know, you need to just, you know, focus on how you respond to it, how you think about what, you know, and how it makes, try to, you know, block yourself from it in a way, because you don't want it to carry, you don't want to carry that with you everywhere you go, that anger or that hatred or whatever. It's all the same thing.
If you pull back, and I have to, you know, outwardly sometimes say, but always inwardly, just say it's all going to be fine.
Yeah,
everything is fine.
Exactly.
And I think that's what a lot of these kind of books help you do. Just kind of pull back and say it's going to be fine. Yeah. Take a breath. And you know, in any situation, not just what the world's going on in the world, but even, you know, in traffic, for instance.
Right.
I know that's one of the things that Seth says in the Seth books, say over and over and again, and it took me the longest time to accept it, because he says you're not here to change the world. You don't have to change the world, and I kept thinking, but but I want, but I really want to. Yeah, but wait. But it's true that the greatest thing that you can do for the world is to take care of yourself and improve yourself and be the kind of person that, you expect, that you want others to be, to be that person. And it does, it does ripple. And I find myself saying that a lot of times in readings with people is, they'll sometimes people want to know, like, but what should I do? What do I have to do? And, the cards will give you some information about that. But so often I'll end up saying, but this is your life.
Right.
You get to choose, if that's not what you want, here's the energy behind this, but it's your life and you get to choose. That's why you're here, is to make those decisions and, to be able to choose.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
One thing I was going to quickly mention about Eckhart Tolle too that I really like about him is that I saw him on Oprah say one time, and she was kind of conveying about, like, it's so hard to be that way, and he was like, don't give me, he's basically paraphrasing, but basically, don't get me wrong, I'm not like this all the time.
Right,
Nobody can be like in the moment all the time.
Right.
And just, that's part of why we're here, is to, figure this out. So don't be so hard on yourself.
Right.
Which is another theme a lot in the Brian Weiss books with a lot of the past life regressions. It's, don't be so tough. Nothing has to be perfect.
Right.
You have to just, let it be and do your best.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's true with, like, again, watching everything that's happening right now. I'm just thinking about this because of the impeachment hearings today. But being able to be in that place of the observer, that spirit, like, just watching it as though you're watching it happen as something historical or as footage you would see or something, to kind of separate yourself from it and just become the observer of it rather than completely immersed and invested in it. It's such a more, like you said, it's such a stress-free feeling to just kind of step back from it, and like you said, it's going to be fine. We've seen this stuff before in different ways through history. They always kind of end the same, and so and they go in a certain, they cycle out in a way. So if you can just step back and look at it as kind of, the observer, rather than be completely immersed and invested as though you can do something, especially with stuff like this, you are the observer. That's what you have to be. But to do that spiritually and just kind of step back and allow it to just be